You're listening to Leadership Loading, a podcast that inspires leaders to be continuous learners and provides insight for those making the leap from the front line to the boardroom. My name is Jason McLaren, and I'm an Air Force firefighter veteran and safety expert turned entrepreneur and nonprofit director. I'm sitting down with industry leaders to talk about their leadership traits and lessons they have learned that can make an impact on future leaders. Hey everyone, it's Jason McLaren, host for Leadership Loading Podcast. My guest today is Dom Brightmon. He's an author, podcaster, and certified leadership trainer with the John Maxwell Team out of Baltimore, Maryland. Dom, thanks for coming on today.
Oh, thanks a bunch, Jace, for having me on, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, so your tagline is advance others to advance yourself. So that's, we wanted you to come on today. We're talking about resilient leadership. This is part 3, and it's taking charge as a leader, not only as those over people, but for yourself. And getting into a little bit more with Dom, like I said, he's an author, but he's got his podcast called Going North. And he has a book of the same title called Going North, and another book called Staying the Course. And we'll talk about those a little bit more later. So Dom, can you introduce yourself to the guests or to the audience?
Sure thing. So for the folks with those lovely ears listening to the voices behind these mics, the name is Dominique Don Brightmon, as Jason mentioned earlier. Tagline is advance others to advance yourself. And I'm on a mission to interview over 1,000 authors in the world to help others realize that you too can write your book and that success is tangible, because we have the tools to succeed in the 21st century. And no matter what, we all go through something, and we are still going through things that sometimes folks may not want to hear, some folks may not want to share yet. But no matter what, we're all human, and we're all can have our own version of success in life. So that's me in a nutshell.
Definitely. And we're talking today about taking charge and all that. And I think you kind of touched on it there, embracing yourself and your self-empowerment. And so can we talk a little bit about taking charge of your career and your development, on how that can affect, you moving up the ladder, or you moving into whatever you want to do outside your 9 to 5?
Sure thing. So funny enough, the outside the 9 to 5 happened kind of in and outside the 9 to 5, because take it back to 2012, where we lost Twinkies for a month and people thought the world was going to end in the year of 2012. My 21st birthday, got into a car accident on my way to a cybersecurity class. And that happened among with two other things, because a month before I got into the car accident, my father, he started his decline with Alzheimer's and eventually met his demise a few years later. And then I was called into the office by my boss and a couple of her other senior people, so the middle manager and the other managers, and was pointing out all these things where I was screwing up at work, my part-time job at the time at a local library. And I realized, you know what, something needs to change here. So I realized, you know what, there's an acres of diamonds in here somewhere. Like, we all have riches beneath our feet that we sometimes don't always touch. And I happened to be in the library, so I had to be an answer in there. So I went into the leadership section of the library, picked up John Maxwell's 5 Loves of Leadership, listened to that book, and then I became a voracious reader. And that's really how I decided to take charge of my life, because when I read that, listened to that first book and read it, I realized, you know what, I can do something better. So I set up to become a voracious reader and to become reborn by setting a New Year's mantra of a year, having a 1 to 3 word theme for every year. And 2013 was the year of rebirth. I read about a good 68 books that year. And 50 may be the goal, but you can always shatter that goal. So reading at least 50 books minimum per year and implementing something from every book, even if it's a new thought or a question. Like, one question that I got from one of the coaches that I hired a few years ago was, how can I add more value to more people in less time? And that really helped me to figure out, you know what? Writing leads to wealth, as Ben Franklin says, and writing is a way to help yourself to break out of that shell. So through actually reading and taking action from the books I've read and putting them into thought, I actually became a full-time librarian. And not only that, became an author, a 2-time author. Heck, even the second book became a bestseller on Amazon, and even started speaking publicly and actually getting paid for it. So it really stemmed from the fact that, you know what? Really, the whole thing of resilient leadership, which I love, by the way, is the fact that life is going to hit you. Like every time. Mike Tyson likes to say, or is quoted for saying that everybody's playing before they get punched in the face. Well, life is going to punch you in the face and the nuts every day. You got to be able to get back up and actually fight back and actually take charge and use the tools around you. Like my tools were books, in addition to getting around better people and just making myself stay focused and staying the course on what I really wanted to become because like really resilience is not only getting back up but also staying up and always improving. If you try to become 1% better minimum every day, then you will see results, especially if you document it.
Definitely. And you talked about tools. How can we use those tools to guide our way? We can't borrow other people's tools. They always, there's an old saying, I'll let you borrow a tool, but if you need to use it twice, you need to buy your own. So, you know, we can't
True.
lean on someone else. So how can we guide our own path using those tools we got?
Yes, indeed. So one of them is stillness, and something I like to do every day is when I wake up, I like to give myself a good 5 minutes of silence minimum to be able to quiet my mind and really get in tune with myself and really see what ideas I could possibly come up with, and always keep a notebook by me because a lot of times there's a lot of answers, a lot of fog, and a lot of noise out there, and some of it could be used for something positive, but at the same time, at the end of the day, if you look within yourself, you're going to get an answer to something that you probably should be doing or where you should direct your focus and where you should direct your actions. And one of the things that I gained from that was the thought of becoming a motivational speaking librarian, motivating folks to read and just get more out of life because leaders are readers. And that's a tool, is just the tool of stillness. And it's not a new tool. It's not my own tool, but it is kind of my own tool because, yeah, it's been quoted before that stillness is key, but at the same time, everybody's stillness is different. Like if we both, like for some strange reason, we just pick for some random day, pick 10 minutes to be silent in two different areas, we would have different thoughts because we have different life experiences. Like yourself, Jason, you're in the Air Force, at least you're retired from the Air Force. You have different experiences than me, and you probably went through different things than myself. I may have been through like a car accident, but hey, you probably had to go through different things with basic training, among other things,
Yeah,
and had to apply your experience from that into your life in different ways. So that's one of the major tools out there is just using your own personal life experience and setting aside time to actually get it concrete and written down somewhere because it's good to capture a thought. It's like ink it when you think it, as some say. Ink it when you think it, because especially when you write it down, it'll even stick with you a lot longer if you're in the middle of the night and you have that great idea. And you go back to sleep because you're so dang tired and you wake up and be like, oh, what the fudge was that idea I had? So yeah, ink it when you think it after you have that moment of stillness.
definitely. Yeah, you talked about reading, and that's one of my weaknesses as a leader. I read, but no way, I'm not even close to 50 books a year. So that's one of my goals is working on that. And then the inking it when you think it. Journaling is a big tool for leaders. I've been working on that also. I've got a journal next to my bed, like you said. Having it there when you need it, it's really handy. So with that, are there any other habits that successful people need to generate, a good leadership lifestyle?
Ah, yes, and another good habit is one that has been getting a lot of steam, a lot of good steam recently is gratitude. It's something that we should all do daily. Because if you wake up, that's easily gratitude moment number one. If you have all your limbs and nobody did some strange surgery or did a little alien probe overnight and you're still got your head and your shoulders, then that's another thing to be grateful for. Heck, if you got your home over your head and the roof didn't fall in, that's another thing to be grateful for. Gratitude's another thing, of course, with affirmations, another classic habit when you start off your day after the moments of stillness. Sometimes I like to yell out the words "do it now, do it now, do it now" at least a good 20 to 50 times to make sure I try to get myself pumped up before I even try to pump anyone else up, because that's another thing about leadership. People see and people do. When people see you, especially when you're at your worst, they're going to be taking in subconsciously what you're doing. And you have to make sure you always try to be at your best at all times. That it kind of goes to this whole theme right now for resilience leadership. You got to make sure that you yourself are ready. You have to make sure you yourself as a well are full before you go trying to pour in everybody else. Because when there's an empty well and it's has no use, you're just going to get the dirt, and then you become dirt with the rest of the earth. So making sure that you yourself are ready to take on the day, and making sure you yourself are okay, having that emotional intelligence and self-awareness to realize where you are currently, and keeping a check on yourself before you wreck yourself in going out into the world and having other folks see some of your actions and maybe copying the wrong ones.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, you talked about recharging and, taking time for yourself because, if your well is empty, you're not going to give anything. And there, there's a couple other episodes of this series that are going to kind of pick on that and kind of focus on that more. So yeah, it's always good to, be ready with that. So how can we take charge in the workplace? How can we, we talked about ourselves and how we take charge of ourselves. How can we take charge in the workplace to increase our effectiveness?
Yes. So there's this great book out there called How to Lead When Your Boss Can't or Won't by John Maxwell. It's a shortened version of his book called 360-Degree Leader. And it really, it's a newer book, has been out for about a good, probably about 6 months at the time of this recording. It came out around September 2019. And a lot of stuff he mentioned in that book, funny enough, I was doing from reading his other books before even picking up that one. So it's kind of interesting. And one of the things was having your own self-development plan, because sometimes if they comes time for your yearly review, your performance review, and usually if they're good about it, they want you to have a self-development plan. Back then, they used to never have one. And then, of course, after 2012, that changed, and I set on that development plan of reading 50 books a year. Another thing could be having YouTube as a mentor. Funny enough, was in a Toastmasters meeting, and one guy, another veteran, mentioned how YouTube is a mentor of his because he climbs a lot of mountain peaks, and he's like in his 70s, and he's been taking a lot of advice, and he even shared the stories of how he actually lost 20 pounds because he didn't want to carry that extra 20 pounds while climbing all these summits. So just stuff like that, making sure you have your own personal development plan and making sure it's actionable, and having folks hold you accountable. So working on your own personal development and letting it shine through. I remember when I was gunning for promotion at the time with my job, they noticed that I was more upbeat and positive because I worked, make sure I could do a little light workout every morning as well on top of everything else, because your mind is only as good as your body, and vice versa, because the better you take care of your body, the better you take care of your mind, the better your output will be. And my output was at a higher level. I was shoving the books at a faster rate, helping customers at a faster rate, even incorporating some outside skills from computer class I took at a community college at the time to help out customers with job resumes, job applications, heck, even on the side, helping them with getting their computers cleaned and defragged and all the other good stuff. And did it to the fact that where my customer service was at a higher level and I set a higher standard for myself, that one of the customers was a principal for a high school that was next door to us, and she had invited me to speak and be a guest interviewer for their interview day, the senior interview day for their high school students, getting them ready for job seeking and job interviews, and to ask them questions and inspire them and give them some feedback, and just letting that show through. It's kind of like that classic recommendation from Think and Grow Rich: go that extra mile. If you go that extra extra mile and smile through the way, and let your personal development go through it, people will take notice. people will take notice, especially when you're consistent with it for like a few months and you just keep growing and growing from it, and even having feedback every now and then to really amp up your game, to really take it to another level.
Definitely. And you talked about Toastmasters. Can you just tell listeners that don't know a little bit about what that is?
Yes, of course. So Toastmasters is this 95 plus year old nonprofit organization that helps folks become better leaders and speakers. It's known mostly for its public speaking, but public speaking is one of the tools of leaders as well. And the tagline is where leaders are made. So it's a nonprofit organization. You can find a club probably within your 15 or 20-mile radius or less. Stop by a local club and show up and contribute. That's another thing that I like to say now more than ever, because a lot of folks, they may have heard about the first rule, showing up. The follow-up rule is contributing as well. When you show up to your local club and you join, make sure you contribute regularly. Don't just show up and put in your resume. It's like, oh, Toastmaster, that sounds interesting. He probably gives a speech or she gives a speech. Just make sure you actually show up, contribute, and practice, because it's a nice laboratory to actually take yourself to another level. Funny enough, what I did in Toastmasters actually helped me to get promoted with my job, because in Toastmasters, I volunteered at the lowest ranking officer role, which is Sergeant Arms. And then within 2 years, I basically did quantum leaps to district level, like leadership, overseeing 17 clubs in the Northern Maryland area, because I joined one club, did a bunch of speeches at that club, but I couldn't get enough of one. So I joined an additional club and got trained, and then not only became club president of one, but overseeing 17 others, was because I just learned the skills of networking and actually showing up and contributing and just saying yes to things and making sure I was available after saying yes, or like even before saying yes. So it's just saying yes, showing up, contributing, and making sure that you always improve.
Yeah, that's the saying yes has been a recurring theme in some of our episodes about, taking those chances and doing something, and, not always saying no. And I think, who's the Virgin CEO, Virgin Atlantic and all that?
Oh, Richard Branson, right?
Yeah. He said, what he say? If you don't know how to do something, say yes and figure out how to do it. Something like that. Um, I've told that to some of my mentees. They're like, "Oh, I don't have that skill or whatever," and I'm like, "Just do it, man. Say you'll do it and figure it out." Good stuff. Yeah, Toastmasters. I've been on and off involved with them since I got out of the military, and I really was involved back in 2008ish. And they give you a little workbook to fill out, and I had about 4 or 5 things done in there and lost it, and so I had to start over again. But it's
Happens to the best of us.
yeah, yeah. Well, so tell the listeners how we can learn more about you. If we want to reach out to you, and actually tell us about your book first.
Oh, sure thing. So I got two books. One's called Going North: Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself. That's the first entry into the business of immortality. This is the book you want to pick up if you don't like reading and you want to become better at anything you do or get promoted at your job. The tools I used in that book, I used to get promoted, are in that book itself. It's good 61 pages. So definitely pick up that book. And the follow-up book is called Stay the Course: The Elite Performers 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. Another small book, the follow-up to the first one, where it goes into I had to overcome the grief with the loss of my father after his dementia struggle, and to really lose some of the weight I gained afterwards. 'Cause that's one of the things that really hit me hard, is the fact that grief and getting all this extra weight gain. That's the other thing too about saying yes. Yes, say yes to life, but make sure that you don't say yes too much, that you overextend yourself. And that's what happened with that one. So awareness is the major key of that book. So feel free to check those out. Heck, they're even in audiobook form too. And head over to dombrightmon.vip. Check out my site. And most importantly, check out the Going North podcast. A different author comes on every Monday and Thursday to share some key thoughts from their books and inspirational stories of how they got there. And I love to hear you and basically hear your thoughts and leave a review and all the other good stuff. And keep following Jason too while you're at it too. Appreciate you having me on, Jason. You the man.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll put all your links in the show notes for the books and your podcast, and we'll push it out on our Facebook group as well. For those that don't know, we have a closed Facebook group for the supporters of the podcast. And at the end of this episode, you'll hear a plug on how to connect to that and get inside the know. So Dom, thanks again for coming on, man. I'll reach out to you, maybe have you on again.
Woohoo! Looking forward to it.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Loading Podcast. You can support this podcast on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/leadershiploading to get access to exclusive content, chats, and a whole lot more. Again, that's patreon.com/leadershiploading, or visit our website, leadershiploading.com, for more options.